I need you to pay close attention to what I'm about to say, because for many people over 40, memory changes don't happen suddenly. They happen quietly, in the background, until one day you realize you're forgetting names, misplacing words, or walking into a room and not remembering why. And one of the most overlooked contributors to this gradual decline might already be on your plate every single day. Before we go any further, if you find this kind of health information valuable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps more people see these important warnings that most of us were never taught in time. Now, I want to be very clear from the start. I am not here to scare you, and I am not saying food alone destroys memory overnight. But what I'm going to share with you is something I have seen repeatedly in clinical practice. Subtle dietary habits that, over time, may influence brain clarity, focus, and long-term cognitive health. What surprised many of my patients is that it's not just junk food or obvious unhealthy meals. Sometimes it is something considered natural or even healthy that can quietly affect how your brain performs, especially when consumed in excess or without balance. I've seen individuals in their 50s and 60s come to me worried about early forgetfulness, and when we take a closer look at their daily routine, there are often patterns involving high-sugar fruits, fruit juices, or constant snacking on sweet items they believed were harmless. This is where the confusion begins, because natural sugar is still sugar, and the brain responds to it in very specific ways. At the same time, there are also foods, especially certain fruits, that are linked with better brain support, improved antioxidant intake, and healthier aging of cognitive function. The difference often comes down to balance, timing, and overall lifestyle, not a single magical ingredient. So today, I want to walk you through something most people never think about: how certain fruits may influence memory pathways indirectly, and which ones are actually associated with better brain resilience as we age. And I think by the end of this, you may look at your daily fruit choices very differently than you do right now. Now let's go a little deeper into what is actually happening inside the brain when these dietary patterns repeat over months and years. To understand memory changes, we first need to understand that the brain is not separate from the rest of your body. It depends heavily on blood flow, stable energy supply, and a delicate balance of chemicals that help nerve cells communicate efficiently. What most people don't realize is that when blood sugar levels repeatedly rise and fall throughout the day, the brain is one of the first organs to feel the impact. You might not notice it immediately, but over time, this can affect concentration, mental sharpness, and recall speed. Now, fruits are often seen as universally healthy, and in many ways, they absolutely are. They provide fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants that your body needs. But here's where nuance matters. Some fruits are much higher in natural sugars and have a higher glycemic impact than others, especially when consumed in large portions or in juice form. I've had patients tell me, "Doctor, I don't eat sweets, I only drink fruit juice." And that's exactly the kind of misunderstanding that can quietly work against brain health. When fruit is juiced, the fiber is reduced, and the sugar enters the bloodstream more quickly. That rapid spike can affect energy stability, and in some individuals may contribute to long-term metabolic strain. This doesn't mean fruit is harmful. It means context matters, portion size matters, and how you combine foods throughout the day matters even more. Another important piece is inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation in the body has been associated in research with cognitive decline risk factors. Diets consistently high in refined sugars and imbalanced carbohydrate intake may contribute to this process over time, especially when combined with sedentary lifestyle habits. But here is something reassuring I want you to hold on to. The brain is also incredibly adaptable. It responds positively to improved nutrition, better sleep, hydration, and consistent movement. I have seen people make changes in their daily eating habits and gradually notice improvements in clarity and focus over weeks and months. So rather than thinking in extremes, it is more helpful to think in patterns. What you eat most often, not occasionally, is what shapes long-term outcomes. Now let's talk about some of the specific fruits people often misunderstand and why the conversation around them is more about balance than fear. One of the most commonly misunderstood items in this conversation is fruit juice. Whether it's packaged juice or freshly squeezed at home, it often removes one of the most important protective components of fruit: fiber. Fiber slows down sugar absorption, helping the body maintain steadier energy levels. Without it, the natural sugars in fruit enter the bloodstream much faster. Over time, frequent spikes and crashes in blood sugar can affect how stable your mental focus feels throughout the day. I've seen patients describe it in very simple terms. My brain feels foggy after breakfast, or I feel clear in the morning but tired and scattered by afternoon. And often, when we review their habits, large servings of juice or very sweet fruits in isolation are part of the picture. Now, I want to emphasize something important. Fruits like mangoes, grapes, bananas, and even ripe tropical fruits are not bad. They are nutritious and provide essential compounds. The concern arises when they become a dominant source of daily sugar intake without enough balance from protein, healthy fats, or fiber-rich foods. The brain thrives on stability. It doesn't like extreme highs and lows in energy availability. That is why balanced meals tend to support more consistent mental performance. Another point I want to mention is timing. Consuming very sweet fruits alone on an empty stomach may lead to faster absorption of sugar compared to eating them as part of a balanced meal. This is a small detail, but over time, these patterns can make a difference in how your body processes energy. What I often recommend in clinical conversations is not elimination, but awareness. Pairing fruit with nuts, yogurt, or whole foods can significantly change how your body responds to it. It slows absorption and supports more stable energy release. And here is where things become interesting. While some dietary patterns may contribute to mental fog, others are strongly associated with better cognitive aging. Certain fruits in particular are rich in compounds that support brain resilience, especially those high in antioxidants and natural pigments. Let's now shift toward what actually supports the brain and why some fruits are consistently linked with better memory and focus as we age. When we talk about supporting memory and cognitive health, we are really talking about protecting the brain's cells from oxidative stress and supporting healthy blood flow. Oxidative stress is a natural process that increases with age, but it can be influenced by lifestyle factors such as sleep quality, stress levels, and nutrition. This is where antioxidant-rich foods play an important role. Berries are one of the most widely studied examples in this area. Blueberries, strawberries, and similar fruits contain natural compounds called flavonoids, which are associated in research with brain-supportive effects, including improved communication between nerve cells. What I find encouraging in practice is that many people notice subtle improvements when they consistently include these foods in a balanced way. Not dramatic changes overnight, but gradual improvements in clarity, recall, and mental energy. Another fruit often highlighted in nutrition research is the apple. Apples contain fiber and plant compounds that support overall metabolic stability. When blood sugar remains more stable throughout the day, many people report feeling mentally more steady as well. Citrus fruits like oranges and grapefruits are also rich in vitamin C and antioxidants. Vitamin C plays a role in protecting cells from oxidative damage, and while it is not a direct memory booster, it contributes to overall cellular health, including in the brain. Now, I want to be responsible here. No single fruit will prevent memory decline, and no single food will guarantee cognitive health. That is not how the human body works. Brain health is the result of consistent patterns over time. But what we can say, based on nutritional science, is that diets rich in whole fruits, vegetables, healthy fats, and lean proteins are associated with better long-term brain outcomes compared to diets high in refined sugars and ultra-processed foods. What I encourage my patients to focus on is variety and balance. The goal is not perfection, but consistency. Small daily choices repeated over years are what shape how we age mentally. And there is another layer to this that often gets overlooked entirely: hydration, sleep, and stress management. Even the best diet cannot fully compensate for chronic sleep deprivation or unmanaged stress. Now, let's bring all of this together and look at how everyday habits quietly shape memory over time, often without people realizing it until subtle changes begin to appear. Section 5. Memory changes rarely happen in a straight line. They tend to develop slowly through a combination of small factors that accumulate over time. That is why many people do not recognize the early signs until they become more noticeable in daily life. One of the earliest patterns I see is not complete memory loss, but rather reduced mental efficiency. People describe it as needing more time to recall words, struggling to focus in conversations, or feeling mentally slower than they used to be. It is important to understand that this does not automatically mean disease. Many reversible and modifiable factors can influence these experiences, including sleep quality, stress levels, physical activity, and nutrition. Diet plays a supportive role here. When the body experiences frequent energy fluctuations, the brain may not receive the consistent fuel it prefers for optimal performance. This can contribute to feelings of mental fatigue or reduced clarity, especially later in the day. At the same time, I want to highlight something very reassuring. The brain has remarkable adaptability, often referred to as neuroplasticity. This means it can respond positively to improved habits at almost any age. I have seen individuals in their 60s make lifestyle adjustments and gradually report better focus, improved recall, and more stable energy levels. Not because of a single change, but because of a combination of small improvements done consistently. This is why I encourage people not to focus on fear, but on awareness. When you understand how your daily choices affect your body, you regain a sense of control. Food choices, including fruit intake, are just one piece of a much larger picture. Movement, sleep, hydration, and mental engagement all contribute significantly to cognitive health. What matters most is avoiding extremes. Neither over-restricting natural foods nor over-consuming high-sugar options is ideal. Balance is where the brain tends to function best. Now, let's explore how to practically apply this understanding in a way that feels realistic, sustainable, and supportive for long-term brain health. Memory changes rarely happen in a straight line. They tend to develop slowly through a combination of small factors that accumulate over time. That is why many people do not recognize the early signs until they become more noticeable in daily life. One of the earliest patterns I see is not complete memory loss, but rather reduced mental efficiency. People describe it as needing more time to recall words, struggling to focus in conversations, or feeling mentally slower than they used to be. It is important to understand that this does not automatically mean disease. Many reversible and modifiable factors can influence these experiences, including sleep quality, stress levels, physical activity, and nutrition. Diet plays a supportive role here. When the body experiences frequent energy fluctuations, the brain may not receive the consistent fuel it prefers for optimal performance. This can contribute to feelings of mental fatigue or reduced clarity, especially later in the day. At the same time, I want to highlight something very reassuring. The brain has remarkable adaptability, often referred to as neuroplasticity. This means it can respond positively to improved habits at almost any age. I have seen individuals in their 60s make lifestyle adjustments and gradually report better focus, improved recall, and more stable energy levels. Not because of a single change, but because of a combination of small improvements done consistently. This is why I encourage people not to focus on fear, but on awareness. When you understand how your daily choices affect your body, you regain a sense of control. Food choices, including fruit intake, are just one piece of a much larger picture. Movement, sleep, hydration, and mental engagement all contribute significantly to cognitive health. What matters most is avoiding extremes. Neither over-restricting natural foods nor over-consuming high-sugar options is ideal. Balance is where the brain tends to function best. Now let's explore how to practically apply this understanding in a way that feels realistic, sustainable, and supportive for long-term brain health. One of the most common questions I receive is, "Doctor, what should I actually eat if I want to support my memory?" And my answer is always the same. Focus on consistency, not complexity. You do not need a perfect diet. You need a stable one. The brain responds best to regular nourishment, steady blood sugar levels, and nutrient-dense foods that provide long-term support. When it comes to fruit, moderation and timing can make a meaningful difference. Instead of consuming large portions of high-sugar fruits alone, pairing them with protein or fiber-rich foods can help slow absorption and reduce energy spikes. For example, combining fruit with yogurt, nuts, or oats can create a more balanced response in the body. This is not about restriction, but about optimization. Another important factor is replacing processed snacks with whole food alternatives. Many people underestimate how much added sugar comes from packaged foods, not just fruit. Reducing these hidden sources can often make a noticeable difference in how mentally clear someone feels. I also want to emphasize hydration. Even mild dehydration can affect concentration and short-term memory. The brain is highly sensitive to fluid balance, and many people do not drink enough water throughout the day. Sleep is equally critical. During deep sleep, the brain processes information and consolidates memory. Poor sleep quality over time can have a significant impact on cognitive performance, sometimes even more than diet alone. What I have learned from years of practice is that small, consistent changes are far more effective than drastic short-term efforts. The goal is sustainability. And perhaps most importantly, I want you to let go of the idea that memory decline is something that happens suddenly without warning. In many cases, there are subtle signals along the way that the body provides. The earlier you pay attention to those signals, the more opportunities you have to support your long-term brain health. Now, let's bring everything together so you can walk away with a clear understanding of what truly matters most for your memory and overall cognitive well-being. If there is one message I want you to take away from everything we have discussed, it is this. Your brain is constantly responding to the life you live every single day. Not just one meal, not just one habit, but the overall pattern of your choices. Food, including fruit, is not something to fear. It is something to understand. Some foods provide steady support, while others require more mindful balance. The key is awareness, not anxiety. What I have seen in my work is that people often feel overwhelmed when they hear conflicting health advice. One day something is good for you, the next day it is labeled harmful. But real health is rarely about extremes. It is about context. When it comes to memory, stability is your greatest ally. Stable blood sugar, stable sleep patterns, stable stress levels. These are the foundations that allow the brain to function at its best. Fruits rich in fiber and antioxidants can be part of a supportive dietary pattern. At the same time, excessive intake of high-sugar options or juices without balance may not be ideal for everyone, especially when combined with other lifestyle risk factors. But I also want to leave you with reassurance. It is never too late to make changes that support your brain. The human body is remarkably responsive, even later in life. I have seen people regain confidence in their thinking, feel more mentally present, and improve their daily functioning simply by becoming more mindful of their habits and making gradual improvements. If you take anything from this, let it be this sense of empowerment. You do not need perfection. You need awareness and consistency. And if you found this helpful, consider subscribing, because there is so much more to understand about how everyday choices quietly shape your long-term health. And I would like to continue sharing that with you, step by step, in a way that feels clear, grounded, and genuinely useful for your life.